Daniel 7. Now, we're going to take kind of a step back in Daniel 7. Daniel 7 actually, if you go to Daniel 5 is when Belshazzar is king. And that's when he sees the hand writing on the wall. So this, Daniel 7, takes place the first year of his reign. And we know that Daniel 6 was after Cyrus had already killed Belshazzar and had started reigning and put Daniel into the lion's den. So this is kind of a jump back in between the two. And it's different because, I've talked about Daniel from a leadership perspective, never being flustered, always being able to communicate, always being able to communicate effectively, professionally, but with authority. And that's something that is lost on many people. Many people struggle with having that capability or having that ability. And some people believe they have that ability and they have no idea what that even is. So, but in this particular section of text, we're going to see that there are parallels that we're going to make between chapter 2 of Daniel and chapter 7. Now, chapter 2, if you recall, there was Nebuchadnezzar. He had a dream, and one of his dreams was the huge statue that had the golden head and everything like that. So because of that, we're going to be able to make leaps or correlations to the text here. Now, I should tell you that when it comes to the text, prophecy and prophetic text, I struggle with. And here's why. I struggle with it because if it hasn't come true yet, then people have a tendency to interject their own opinion or their own thoughts or themselves into the text. And that becomes a very dangerous place to be. That becomes a very dangerous way to teach and preach. So, that being said, I will let you know when there is a text like that. And, for example, there's going to be connections to America made in this particular text. And that being the case, you're not going to be able to basically disinterject people's thoughts. And that's you just get into some scary areas at that point. So let's get started. Will be Daniel chapter 7, and we're going to read through that. So if you need a Bible, there's some in the back. Use your phone, whichever. Daniel 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions in his mind as he lay in his bed. The visions in his mind as he lay in his bed. Then he wrote the dream down and related the following summary of it. Daniel said, I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and there were four beasts coming up from the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had the wings of an eagle. I kept looking until the wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. A human mind was also given to it, and behold, another beast, the second one, resembling a bear, and it was raised up on the one side, and there were 3 ribs in its mouth with its teeth. And thus they said to it, Arise and devour much meat. After this I kept looking, and behold, another one, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrifying, and extremely strong. It had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet, and it was different than all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. While I was contemplating the horn, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boasts. I kept looking until the thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His vesture was like white snow, and his hair, the hair of his head, was like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. The wheels were a burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat, and the books were opened. Then I kept looking, because the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking, I kept looking until the beast was slain, and his body was destroyed and given into the burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. I kept looking in the night vision, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like the Son of Man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And he was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within me, and the visions in my mind kept alarming me. I approached one who was standing by and began asking him the exact meaning of this. So he told me that he made known to me the interpretation of these things. These great beasts, which are 4 in number, are the 4 kings who will rise from the earth. But the saints of the highest one will receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever for ages to come. Then I desired to know the exact meaning of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with teeth of iron and claws of bronze, and which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the remainder with its feet, and the meaning of the 10 horns that were in the head, and the other horn which came up before it, which 3 of them fell, namely that the horn which possessed eyes and a mouth uttering great boasts, and was larger in appearance than its associates. I kept looking, and the horn was waging war with the saints, overpowering them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was passed in favor of the saints of the highest one. And the time arrived when the saints took possession of the kingdom. Thus he said, the 4th beast will be the 4th kingdom of the earth, which is different from all the other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth and tread it down and crush it. As for the 10 horns out of this kingdom, 10 kings will rise, and another will rise after them, and he will be different from all the previous ones, and he will subdue 3 kings. He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the highest one, and he will intend to make alterations in time and in law, and they will be given to his hand for a time, times and a half time. But the court will sit for judgment, and his dominion will be taken away, annihilated and destroyed forever. Then the sovereignty and dominion of the greatest of the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and the dominions will serve and obey him. At this point, the revelation ended. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts were greatly alarming me, and my face grew pale, but I kept the matter to myself. So, ironically, Daniel is keeping the vision to himself, but he's turning white. as if someone won't find out what's wrong with him or ask what's wrong with him. Now, the beasts that we're referring to, if you recall, there's a distinct connection between Daniel 2 and Daniel 7. And so, if you recall, the very first kingdom was the gold head, and it was Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 2. Now, in Daniel 2, Nebuchadnezzar's head, then the second piece became silver. This third piece was bronze. Then the thighs were iron, and then you had iron and potter's clay. So iron and potter's clay being combined, that's where Daniel 2 took it. Well, in Daniel 7 then starts there. The very first beast that comes from the ground, the lion that has eagle's wings. Eagle's wings are going to denote speed, fleetness, how fast they're able to move. Well, they get plucked. And if you recall, Babylon was bigger than anything at the time. So Babylon, being bigger than anything, was spreading, so that denotes the wings. But the fact that they were plucked, and then the lion had to stand on his hind legs, then that denotes when Nebuchadnezzar lost his mind, right? He was a beast. He ate grass in the fields with the donkeys. But then when he stood, he was given a heart and a brain. So that would suggest that when he came back and regained his consciousness and then became king again. The following beast, the bear has the 3 bones in his mouth. And the 3 bones in his mouth would suggest the 3 kingdoms that were destroyed. The 3 bones would suggest that they would be the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Medes. Now, again, keep in mind that this is all prophecy. Keep in mind that this is a projection of something. Okay? There's going to be things that are suggested that there are commentators or theologians out there that believe that America is one of the pieces of the throne, or of the feet. That's a stretch for me. I struggle with doing prophetic text because, as I said, there's too much of an interjection of self into it. And by doing that, you're putting yourself into the text or above the text, and I struggle with that. So, that being the case, notice that the second one, the beast, is the bear that goes and devours much meat. That's the silver. Okay? Recall the silver as being the Medes and the Persians. Then you have the bronze, which was the midsection, and then you had the thighs, which were of iron down to the feet and the toes were iron mixed with clay. And that's what people make the assumption is America, because it's divided. And America has probably always been divided, at least on some level or to some degree. Rome, however, was one that also was to be destroyed, but it wasn't defeated. It was destroyed from within, and that's how Rome fell. Rome was about 1,500 years old, though, when that happened. And so to make correlations between that and America, as far as a country goes, is still relatively young. So the fact that we're a couple hundred years old is relatively young compared to other countries. So there's a timeline here that you notice. You have these kingdoms that fall right in line. right in line with how they came about. So you had Nebuchadnezzar, so you had Babylon, and then you had, right after that, you had the Medes and the Persians, and then the third one is the leopard, speed, moves with speed, 4 heads. 4 heads denotes 4 directions. So covering all points of the compass, covering all points of the map. And who was the commander of the Greeks? There was this Macedonian cat who was in charge, named Alexander the Great. And Alexander moved very, very quickly. Destroyed very, very quickly. Captured much land. So the 4 wings, the 4 heads, 4 directions, very rapid. Now, then you have Rome. Rome defeats Greece, and Rome becomes very, very large. But is Rome the 4th beast? Here's the thing. It has iron teeth and bronze claws. Well, the bronze or brass was known to be that of the Greek portion of the statue. The Greek portion of the statue was a different metal than the next portion of the statue. So here, in this beast, you have both metals in one figure. So my struggle is that Greece or is that Rome? We don't know. So, but then also you have the horns. So of these horns that you have, there are 10 tribes or 10 kingdoms or 10 toes that come from the statue. However, if you take a look back historically, you see that there were 10 tribes. The Albion, which are the Germans today, the Burgundians, who are the Swiss, the Franks, who are now the French, the Lombards, who are now the Italians, the Saxons, who are now the English, the Suevi, who are now the Portuguese, the Visigoths, who are Spanish, the Heruli, the Ostrogoths, and the Vandals. The last 3 are extinct. Recall, of the horns, the final horn was going to come out and displace the 3 previous kingdoms. Does that mean that these 3 were displaced for an 11? We don't know. We don't know. Now, one thing we do see is these attempts to unify the European Union or Northern Europe in that area from Egypt, Iraq, over to Northern Europe, things like that. And so because of that, we have a lot of attempts to unify that area. And those attempts started in 768 by King Charlemagne. If you recall, after Rome had fallen, it was so large, they had split it. And Charlemagne decided that he was going to take part of Christianity, which he made the religion of the day, and the pagan religions, and combined them. So he had taken pagan statues and renamed them Christian names, like Isis and Horus. He renamed the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus. So there are all these different statues that he did that with, and he tried to unify the European Union, which he failed. Charles V tried it again in about 1525. Louis XIV tried it again about the 1700s. Napoleon Bonaparte tried it again in 1800. And then Adolf Hitler tried in 1940. So there's these areas where these attempts to unify this area, which is prophesied would happen. But does that mean that, because why would America unify that part of the European Union? The other thing is that in the timeline, these beasts happened pretty quickly upon each other as far as the kingdoms were concerned. And yet, America being thousands of years later, I struggle with that being a peace. However, the kingdom that is referred to that will have total dominion and last forever is that of Christ. Well, that has yet to happen. So, could one be much later than the other? We don't. It refers to the horn being the smaller horn, and then later refers to that final horn being larger. It's like I said in the first service, it reminds me of like a chihuahua. Because it just seems to not do anything except yap. Yeah, a chihuahua is like yappy, right? You don't know what that means, but yappy, you know what yappy. If you hear yappy, you know what yappy is, right? Yeah, see, just nonstop, right? They just shake and do that. I've got her not going at home. It's the same thing. And so, because the thing is every time we hear about this text, and we hear about this horn, it's got the mouth of a man and the eyes of a man. It's just going, talking, yapping. And till ultimately the Ancient of Days kills them. Or not kills, but provides judgment. Now, there's also a thing here where we see where you have the Ancient of Days and the Son of Man together. And between those two, the Son of Man and the Ancient of Days, if anybody is ever to suggest that there is no Trinity, you can see that when the Ancient of Days is there, getting ready to prepare judgment, and then in verse 13, the Son of Man comes up and is appointed to him or given to him, then during that time period, you can see two pieces of the Trinity right there. So this is yet another example of the Trinity being in place. So I kept looking in the night vision, and behold, in the clouds of heaven, one like the Son of Man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days, and he was presented before him. Jesus himself refers to himself as the Son of Man. And we see that he is presented to the Ancient of Days because he is the Son of Man, and he is presented to God the Father. He is presented to him as a tribute. But you see that this is right when he gives him the kingdom. He gives him the kingdom and states that it will last forever. It will have total dominion. Everybody, because he says a kingdom, so it makes it sound like it's going to be, just some side kingdom. But then he goes on to say that it's a kingdom that all peoples, nations, men of every language might serve him. His dominion is everlasting, which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. So we can see that Jesus is the final piece of the prophecy. Now, that's where, could America be a part of it? Maybe, we don't know. Because some would suggest that maybe with Hitler or someone like that, but Hitler never attacked God directly. He certainly did plenty of things that were not godly, but he never attacked God directly. I mean, he did go and he made an agreement with the Catholic Church that if he would give them their own political party, if they were to vote for him, which they did. And then he turned around and started destroying their churches because they tried to make an agreement with Hitler, and then he turned around and destroyed it. So there was never really any direct, and that was more behind the scenes than it was anything else. And so because of that, it wasn't much of like up front, which makes it seem like this final horn does a lot of the yapping up front. So Daniel then asks for the interpretation to be given to him, and the interpretation, it almost sounds like he's not satisfied with the interpretation that's given to him because of the way that he receives it. And then, interesting that he didn't tell anybody. Not really sure why that was the case. Now, Daniel, from this point forward, starts getting more and more prophecy, more and more visions. The very first 6 books of Daniel are all about events, if you recall me telling you that. Then the final are about prophecy. Now, where we will be from moving forward, I don't know the answer to that yet. But the struggle, again, is that anytime you're dealing with prophetic books, stay within the text. You don't want to push and start getting outside of the text itself, because if you do that, you really run the risk of starting to start false teaching. You really run the risk of starting to do what is called eisegesis, which is injecting yourself into the text rather than exegesis, which is just giving the text itself. Okay? So that's the scariest part of the whole thing. So let me pray, and then we will wrap this thing up. Okay? Father, I pray that you would be with this group. I pray that you would just, your word, Father, would sink in, would create the result that you wanted. Father, I pray that you would be honored, you would be glorified, Father, in all that we do, Father. I thank you. I praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right.